So, hello and welcome along to another edition of Isolation Interviews for Hospital Radio and my YouTube channel. And I'm super excited that my guest today is the fantastically talented Geoff Paine, who of course plays Clive Gibbons on Neighbours. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Matthew. Thanks for having me here.
Now, before we obviously talk about Neighbours, how has life been like over the last year in Melbourne? I mean, I know here in the UK we're in another lockdown. So how are things for you?
So we have kind of emerged from this lockdown period, and it was pretty grim to begin with, but we got used to staying at home. A lot of dogs have been purchased over the past year, including us. We got a COVID dog as well. So we have been working from home, Zooming, as we're doing now. Suddenly we're all used to seeing ourselves on screen. Actors aren't the only people that hate the way they look on screen. So yes, we're emerging out of it now, but we realise you guys are kind of going into lockdown. But it's all worth it in the end, and I'm sure we will come out the other side of this fitter, stronger, better, and more used to seeing ourselves on screen, and more grateful for the little places that we live in, because that's our little world to begin with. Yeah.
And I imagine as well, it must have been good to kind of have a job, to go to, because there's a lot of people that haven't been able to work.
Absolutely. So I'm lucky. I'm sort of part-time on Neighbours. So I also have a job at a university doing video work and explaining behavioural science and that sort of stuff. So I have been lucky. But you're right. There's been plenty of people who would have thought that the airline industry and the hotel industry would be so badly affected by this, and kind of finding new ways of making that stuff work. But yeah, no, very grateful to be working.
Now, obviously, you've been back on Neighbours now it must be about 4 or 5 years you've been back on the show. How has it differed from when, because obviously you were back, on the show back in the 80s. So how has it differed being back now to when you were there in the 80s?
So I keep joking that nothing's changed and everything's changed. So the whole technology has changed. The fact that you and I can talk to each other now across the world didn't exist back in the 80s. Fan mail was the only way we could work out how we were going. So we would have to wait 3 or 6 months for letters to come back and that sort of thing. Today it's instant. The technology's changed. There was no internet. There was none of this kind of World Wide Web back in the day. But of course the stories go on, and the core of the stories are a group of people that basically know and like each other in that kind of cul-de-sac arrangement, that street. And thousands of actors have gone through. And the funny thing is, I'm one of the old boys now, and I was one of the youngies back in the day, 38 or so years ago. So it's interesting seeing that whole cycle of generation change, and the new group of young people coming through. But it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
I mean, do you find that now you're able to enjoy it more because, you're a bit older, you're able to maybe sort of appreciate it more? Do you think that there is that kind of, that more appreciation?
Absolutely. And there's far less pressure and expectation, I think, in a way. So yes, it's nice to sit back and enjoy, and also working with Colette and Annie, and seeing some of the old faces that I haven't seen for a while. So it's nice to be at the other end and sit back and watch the youngies do their thing. And we have a bit of fun as well. We generally work those scripts and make it fun.
I mean, one of my favourite videos online is some of the Q&As that you do with Colette Mann. You two look like you just have so much fun together.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time making Colette laugh. Yeah, we do bounce off each other. It's the same with Annie as well. We have a lot of fun. It's cheeky fun, but we do have a job to do. We understand that their stuff has to be done and made and put down on, I was going to say tape. Tape doesn't exist anymore. Even things like roll up, which used to be the instruction to, nothing's rolling anymore. It's all being, but you can't say pixel up or digitize because it doesn't work the same way. So the language has changed, but the actual task of telling that story hasn't. That stayed the same.
Now, obviously, Clive has had a few relationships in recent years. Is there a favourite for Geoff? Is there one that you think he's better suited to, that you would love to see him with long term?
Well, of course, I have no control over that, and they've matched Clive up with different characters over the years, with Sheila and of course with Jane now. But the funny thing is, it's actually new territory, this kind of gawky, not gawky, this kind of teen romance. What's funny is seeing in an older couple the same vulnerable sense that young people feel like when they're feeling a relationship out and putting their heart on the line, all of that sort of stuff. So it was interesting playing that sort of stuff from an older character's point of view and realizing it's the same vulnerable discomfort everyone feels when they're starting a relationship. And of course, their job is to complicate it. The writers, their job is to put little obstacles and landmines in our way, and our job is to, as characters, negotiate all that sort of stuff and still make it work and make it truthful enough that people go, yeah, it's crazy, but I think this could happen.
I mean, the thing with Sheila is she just had a habit of every time something good comes her way, she seems to just mess it up every time.
Yeah. She just blows it up. That's right. I mean, her heart's in the right place, but yeah, she has this talent for messing things up, asking for forgiveness, and then messing it up again.
Yeah. And then the other great thing as well is you've got, kind of Jane is the kind of opposite, because you've got Sheila's the tough exterior, the one that really goes out. She knows what she wants, but she maybe messes it up. Whereas Jane is a lot more, not saying the safe option, but, it's kind of like you kind of know that you can trust her. You know that she's not going to do things to sort of mess it up, really.
Well, I mean, on paper, that's true. But of course, they will find ways of putting us at loggerheads and disagreeing over things. And in fact, we're working on a storyline now, which I can't talk about, where, yes, there's a bit of tension between the two of them. And normally it's, they're quite compatible sort of characters. The funny thing about Clive was that back in the day, he was the reckless, risk-taking, kooky sort of character. And he's matured into this very conservative sort of guy that every now and then breaks out. You can still see some of the cheekiness in Clive coming out every now and then. And yes, I'm looking forward to having a bit more of that kind of freedom to play with Clive as it develops.
I mean, I know a few years ago we did get to see the return of the gorillagram, which I know Colette said was one of her favourite storylines to do, dressing up as the gorilla.
Because she had no idea that that was his entree into the show. And I've got to say, when I started, I was 21, and I took myself a little seriously. I'll be honest. I thought I was, a very serious, talented Shakespearean actor, in fact. And standing in a latex gorilla suit on a 33-degree day, a very hot day in a Melbourne summer, I suddenly realised, this is what show business is. You make the best of what you've got and don't take yourself too seriously. Yeah.
I mean, that's the great thing with Clive as a character, is that obviously we've seen when he was younger his kind of silly side. Now, obviously, he's a doctor. He's got that more serious side, but then he does have those events, those things that are just funny, the humour. So it must be a fun character to play because you have got that mixture of serious and funny.
Well, it is. And what's interesting is that he's the COO of the hospital. I'm still not exactly sure what a chief operating officer does. In Clive's case, he seems to handle serious news. So sometimes there's a clipboard that comes in with something serious, and other times he is dealing with life and death situations. And then he gets a moment where he can be whimsical and funny and genuine and heartfelt. And it is lovely to play those different sort of colours as an actor, and to not make him just one note. But it's interesting. I wear a tie more as Clive than I do in any other time in my life. It's funny. He's so formal and together.
I know when I interviewed Alan Fletcher, who of course plays Dr. Carl, he said that he often gets asked medical advice because people forget sometimes that he's not actually a doctor. Do you get that? Do you get people asking you for medical advice?
Not yet. But I won't dare to give them any medical advice, I don't think. But so the people that talk to me about the show are kind of shocked that I'm there in real life, normally just talking about things, or that I have another job, that I do other things outside of. Actually, I'm on the local council. I'm a councillor. I ran for council last year. And you can get people who, they're very heartfelt about what they're talking about, and then they lean forward and say, also, I watch the show every now and then. So they have this whole other side of watching the show. Yeah.
I mean, would you like to see some of Clive's family on the show? Because I mean, he's often talked about a daughter who lives in New Zealand. Obviously, we did meet his brother and his father, I think, back in the 80s. But would you like to see more of his family on the show?
Yeah. So they talk about this New Zealand connection, the daughter, the granddaughter. It's interesting. I don't know what they've got on the shelf, so to speak, just waiting to come out. Yes, I would. Because there's a whole 30-odd years of mystery about what Clive's been doing, where he's been working, what his trajectory was, why his marriage ended. And we touch on it every now and then, but they've got that whole kind of back catalogue to explore if they want to go back and find out what the story is. Yes, Clive had his elder brother and his father, I think, had a lot of clashes with them back in the day. And it'd be interesting to see if he's turned into those characters now that he's gone older.
And of course, I mean, when you did come back in 2017, did it take much convincing for you to go back, or was it kind of like as soon as they asked, you thought, yeah, I want to go back?
Well, the funny thing is, once I got back into the show, I had a little bit of trepidation to go. I haven't done this particular type of, I'd done other TV shows, other acting, but I stepped back into it like a comfortable pair of shoes. And it was, it's the same building, it's the same studios as when we started out. And yeah, it was amazing how easily it all just slipped back in. Some of the same sets, almost actually. Now the sets I think are new and different. But yes, it was amazing how quickly old ways of working snap back in, really. Yeah.
And it's also quite exciting that obviously over the years we have seen a kind of creep back of some of the characters from the original times. Obviously we've seen Des back, Melanie Pearson's come back recently. So for you, it must be nice to see these people who you've maybe not seen for a long while, to have them back on the show and to work with them again.
Wonderful. It's wonderful to see Paul Keane and other sort of people I haven't seen for decades back in the show. It was just great. And also to see them, we're both much older men now, to talk about life and how things have changed over the years and family and that sort of thing. It's great. When you start out, you're in your 20s, and once you're in your 50s, you've got so much more to talk about and share.
Is there anyone from the past that you would love to see back on the show who we haven't quite had back on yet? Is there a character you would love back on?
I'm just trying to think of it, because you understand I was only there way back at the start. So I don't have a long kind of catalogue of characters to choose from. I mean, it'd be nice to see like Peter O'Brien's character. Is it Shane, I think, back, and the Ramseys. I think it was David Clancy was one of the original. Was it? He was one of the early Ramsey characters.
Yeah,
and,
I can't remember the name of it. Is it Danny? Danny.
Danny.
Danny. There we go.
That's right, Ramsey. And of course, Kylie. I doubt that she'll pop back in, but who knows? Yeah, it's just funny thinking back to those years and years ago. I actually wrote an article on how things had changed for a local paper here, and talked about, in those days, a sandwich cost $1.38 or something. Hilarious, one of those sort of things. But of course, people passed notes. People wrote letters in those days. There were no mobile phones. It's hard to believe a world where there were no mobile phones. You had to actually ring someone up, and that everyone in the house could hear what you were saying. And that was the truth of Neighbours back in the day. It was a whole other series of different codes and social norms.
And also, it must be quite fun working with a new generation, as I say, because, you worked with, like Jason Donovan back in the day, and his daughter is now obviously on the show playing Harlow. And I mean, yes, the whole of the young cast are amazing. So it must be great to work with kind of new blood.
It is. And, they whip us into line. They throw a bit of curveballs at us, and we give back. And it's great. It's great to see a new generation coming through. And making their own shortcuts and learning on the job as you do. I get the feeling that it's one of those things where you just have to pick it up and run, because they have to shoot so much. I think they shoot the equivalent of a feature film a week, so to speak. So you've just got to jump in there and give it your all, make your choices, make them quick, and keep running at it. And that's what I love about it.
And the other thing, of course, for yourself was a lot of people were calling for you to be featured on the opening titles for a long time, and it's finally happened. For you, was that quite a happy moment?
Yes. Although I think I had my COVID beard, so I think I've got rid of that now. So yes, but it's nice to be out in the opening credits up front as well. Yeah.
Now, I just want to say it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. But before we go, is there any messages you'd like to give to any of the patients who are listening in hospital at the moment?
I hope that, of course, that you are going to feel better over time, that you recover as quick as you can. Take it easy. And remember, with this whole COVID thing, the mask and the hand washing, it's just new habits. We just get used to new habits. Wear the masks that you like the look of, and get used to washing your hands, and we will get back together again. The social distancing thing, we'll get through this, and then we'll learn how to work around it, as people always have and always will. And yeah, take it easy, everyone.
Perfect. And also, don't forget Neighbours, 1:45, 5:30 on Channel 5. A massive thank you, Geoff, for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. So keep safe, and we'll hopefully speak again soon.
Indeed. Thank you so much.